Hi guys. So this is going to be kind of a weird recording because I'm in my car right now, but I had to bring Eloise to the gym, and so this is where I am, and I needed to make this video, and so here it is. So I'm in the car in the parking lot of the gymnastics gym, and I am doing this for you. So don't ever say that I lack dedication to you. So we're going to talk about energy flow today. So you should know by now, and you probably have known this for a very long time, that the main source of energy for life on Earth is the sun. There are some organisms that don't depend on the sun, but there are not a very lot of them. The vast majority of organisms rely on the sun for energy. The ones that don't rely on inorganic, and inorganic means not carbon-based, inorganic chemical compounds for energy. So when we talk about organic versus inorganic, we'll do that more in the next unit, and that'll make a little bit more sense. But just know that that means things that don't have carbon. So not carbohydrates, not fats, not proteins, just chemicals like sulfur-based chemicals are what these organisms use to make their own food, the way we talk about plants making their own food out of sunlight. Okay, so autotrophs. Autotrophs are also known as producers. Those two words are synonymous. Auto means self, troph refers to nutrition. So an autotroph makes its own food, or it provides its own nutrition. Okay, so autotrophs make their own food. They produce food. They use energy from their environments. They turn inorganic compounds, so really simple little compounds, into organic molecules, really big molecules, most specifically carbohydrates. Okay, so we know that plants are autotrophs. There are also bacteria that are autotrophs, and there are a whole bunch of other kinds of things that are autotrophs or producers that we don't really think about because we tend to go, oh, producers, plants, done. Okay, but as we go through this school year, you'll learn more and more and more about all of the different kinds of producers that are out there that aren't just plants. Now, a word about producers. Your book refers to primary producers. That makes me nuts because there is no other kind of producer other than a primary producer. So all producers are primary producers. So I don't know why they need the word primary on it, but your book does that. I never am going to do that, and you'll probably make me a little crazy if you do that too. Okay, so autotrophs or producers are going to use either sunlight or chemical energy, and it depends on what the organism is, and it depends on its environment. So a plant is going to use sunlight. Bacteria down in a thermal vent in the bottom of the ocean is going to use the inorganic chemicals that are there. Photosynthesis is photo, light, synthesis, which means building. So photosynthesis, you put it together, building things from light. The thing you're going to learn about me is that I love Greek and Latin roots and prefixes and suffixes because you can figure out anything you need to figure out most of the time based on the name of something and just knowing the Greek and Latin roots and prefixes and suffixes. Scientists really aren't that creative. They name stuff exactly what it is. They just get fancy by going to Greek and Latin. So then chemosynthesis, chemo refers to chemicals, synthesis refers to building. So chemosynthesis is building something with chemicals. So photosynthesis is what plants do. They use the sunlight to build their food. And chemosynthesis is what those bacteria in those really extreme environments, that's what they use to build their food. All right, heterotrophs. So hetero means different, and trophic still refers to nutrition. So heterotrophs get their food from other organisms. That's why heterotrophs are also called consumers, because they consume other organisms in order to get their energy. There are a bunch of different kinds of heterotrophs or consumers. There are herbivores that eat plants. Now, they are herbivores. They're not herbivores. Herbivores eat guys named Herb, okay? These are herbivores. They eat plants. Carnivores eat animals. Omnivores, omni means all, so omnivores eat both plants and animals. Decomposers break down dead material, so they're going to break down something that's already dead. And then they're going to leave, like, that stuff going to break apart into little bits and pieces and flakes and stuff. And then detritivores are going to come along and eat that. So detritivores eat the pieces that are left behind by decomposers. And if decomposers were things like bacteria, then the detritivores are actually going to eat the decomposers too. So they're going to eat the detritus and they're going to eat the decomposers. So it's kind of a, 2-for-1 situation if you're a detritivore. Okay, so I have some stray letters here, but energy flow in an ecosystem is unidirectional. Now, this is important because we just spent a lot of time talking about cycles, right? We talked about the nitrogen cycle, the water cycle, we talked about the carbon cycle, you read about the phosphorus cycle. Okay, so there are all these cycles. But here's the thing, energy doesn't cycle. Energy does not cycle. Energy is unidirectional. Energy only goes one direction. So energy starts at the sun, then it goes to the autotrophs who convert that energy into carbohydrates and other molecules. And then it goes to the heterotrophs when the heterotrophs eat it. Okay. So energy flow in an ecosystem is unidirectional. Energy flow is not, energy flow is not a cycle. All right, so food chains. You're probably familiar with food chains. You probably learned about food chains like in 4th grade or something. It's a really, really simplified model of the transfer of energy in an ecosystem. So we have the producer, which is the leaf from our tree. We have the snail, so the energy goes from the producer to the snail, and then the energy goes from the snail to this, I don't know what this bird is, whatever this bird is, and then the energy goes from this bird to this owl, hawk, whatever it is, this bird of prey, when this bird of prey eats this guy. The energy starts here and moves through here. What I want you to notice, sorry, as I flip through all those screens, I wanted to see if I had it on another screen. What I want you to notice is the direction of those arrows, because this is really important. The arrows in a food chain go in the direction of the flow of energy. The arrows in a food chain go in the direction of the flow of energy. The arrows do not show you what eats what. Okay, so take another look at this diagram. All right. Does not mean that the leaf is eating the snail. I have to say we would all be pretty traumatized if we saw a leaf coming along and eating a snail. That's not what this is doing, okay? This does not mean that the snail is eating whatever this weird bird is, okay? It means the energy is going from the leaf to the snail, and the energy is going from the snail to this weird bird, okay? So again, arrows in a food chain go in the direction of the flow of energy. All right, then there are also food webs. Food webs are more realistic models of energy transfer, but they're still really simplified. And that's because we don't all just eat one thing, right? You probably aren't eating the same thing for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You're eating a bunch of different stuff because that's what we need. We need variety in our diets. And that's true for almost everything out there in the world too. It needs to eat different things. So this deer is going to get energy from this tree. So again, see that arrow is going from the tree to the deer. But this deer is also going to get energy from the grass. So it's not just one thing. This rabbit is going to give energy to the fox when the fox eats it. This rabbit is also going to give energy to this owl when the owl eats it. And it's going to get energy from this grass. Okay, so you end up with, by the time you have all of these arrows going around, you end up with a web. And so we call this a food web. Now, it's important to know this is still really, really simplified. This is still not perfect, but it's better than a food chain at least. Now, you could break apart this food web to make a bunch of food chains. You could say, here's a food chain, grass to grasshopper to robin to owl. Okay, that's one food chain. Or you could go, another food chain could be grass to grasshopper to mouse to fox. Okay, so there are a bunch of different food chains, and some of them even overlap a lot, but they're different ultimately. Okay, so trophic levels. Remember we said trophic refers to nutrition. Trophic levels are steps in a food chain or a food web. Okay, so I'm going to start down at the bottom, and we're going to start with the autotrophs or the producers. That's where our energy starts out, because our plants, I don't like that this says produce energy, because we know that energy can never, ever, ever be created or destroyed, just like with matter. Matter and energy both can never, ever, ever be created or destroyed. They can only be converted. So really what producers do is they convert energy from a stored energy that we can't get to a stored energy that we can use. So it's a usable form of energy, okay? So our autotrophs or our producers are that first nutrition level. And then we have primary consumers. And primary consumers are the first ones who are going to eat somebody else. And the primary consumers eat the producers, okay? Now, you heard me rant about producers not being primary, right? I'm totally okay with consumers being primary, because look what's next. there are secondary consumers. Secondary consumers are a thing. Secondary consumers eat the primary consumers. They're the ones who are going to eat these guys. So your herbivores are eating the plants. Those are your primary consumers. And then you've got carnivores that are going to eat the herbivores, okay? So you might have here the grass, and then here's the rabbit, and then here's the hawk that's going to eat the rabbit, okay? And then you have tertiary consumers, which are also carnivores because they're going to eat the secondary consumers, okay? So you could have the grass, and then you could have the mouse, and then you could have the fox, and then you could have the hawk, okay? Now, you could go up to a fourth one called a quaternary consumer, but the quaternary consumer, for various reasons, is not going to happen very often, and we're almost never going to go past a quaternary consumer, okay? And that has to do with the flow of energy through this. So again, notice the arrows. The energy starts here, and then the energy moves up the trophic levels, okay? So autotrophs are producers, then primary consumers, secondary consumers, tertiary consumers. You could also call these primary heterotrophs, secondary heterotrophs, tertiary heterotrophs. That would work too. And then there's quaternary carnivore or quaternary consumers or quaternary heterotrophs. Okay, so the energy pyramid is going to show you the transfer of energy between trophic levels. And generally speaking, only about 10% of the energy is available to the next level up. Why do you think that is? What do you think happens to that other 90% of the energy? No, really, I want to know. What do you think happens? Okay, lame, I know you didn't actually answer. Okay, so what it actually does is the organism uses that energy, right? So I'm using energy right now to talk and regulate my body temperature. It's getting really hot in this car, by the way. Regulate my body temperature and move my hands around and breathe and, do all the different things that I need to do to keep my body going. Okay, so I'm using 90% of the energy that I've eaten, but then 10% of it is getting stored in me so that if somebody comes along and eats me, Sasquatch walks up and gobbles me up out of the side of my car in the middle of the day, that 10% of the energy in me is going to go to Sasquatch, or 10% of the energy I've eaten is going to go to Sasquatch, and the other 90% I've used up for myself. Okay, so if we look at this in a pyramid, okay, the producers have 100% of the energy. They're that first level. And then we go to the next level. These guys are only going to get 10% of this. So if we go to the next level, these little fishes are only going to get 10% of what these guys had. But 10% of what these guys had is only 1% of what these guys had, okay? And then this big green fish is only going to get 10% of what these little dudes had, okay? So if he's only got 10% of what these little dudes have, that is 10% of this, which is 10% of this, which is 10% of this, which is 1/10 of 1% of the original energy that was available. By the time we get up here to this dude is only getting 10% of this. He only got 10% of this. They only got 10% of this. They only got 10% of this, which means we're down to 1/100th of a percent of the original energy available. So here is our producer, our primary consumer, our secondary consumer, our tertiary consumer, our quaternary consumer. So you can imagine if by the time we went up to a fifth level, there would be almost no energy available, okay? So a tertiary consumer is going to end up with only about 1/1000th of the energy that the producer originally made available. That's the problem, okay? That's just not cool. And so we just don't go up any further because it's just not worth it. Okay, there's another kind of pyramid called a biomass pyramid. So bio means life, mass means mass, okay? So how much space it takes up. And so that's volume, but how much mass, how much substance there is there, how much matter there is there. So what it really shows is the amount of food potentially available at each trophic level. So our total mass of our producers, this means if we went into an ecosystem, let's say we named our ecosystem as Winnetka. Okay, if we said our ecosystem was Winnetka and we took all of the producers, so we found all of the plants, all of the grass, all of the trees, all of the flowers, all of the everything, and we got it all together and we put it onto a scale and we found the mass of it. That would be this right here, okay? Now we go and find the mass of all of the herbivores. So we get all the rabbits, all the chipmunks, all the squirrels, all the anybody who's an herbivore, a deer, if you got deer running through your yard, maybe we'll grab them and throw them on the scale. We find the mass of the herbivore. That's going to be less than the mass of all the producers. Okay. Then we go look for the predators. We look for all the foxes. We look for the coyotes. We look for if, it's a weird day where a cougar is walking through. We find the mass of predators and we throw them on all on a scale, find the mass. That's going to be right here. Then we go to the final consumers. We get all our hawks and owls and all those dudes, and we find their mass and we put them here. You're going to end up with a pyramid shape. You're going to end up with a decrease in biomass. And that's because of that loss of energy. So there's so much more energy available here for these guys than there is for here. So these guys have to eat a lot more. Everybody's got to eat more than they are in order to get enough energy to keep themselves alive. Okay, another one is called the pyramid of numbers. And the pyramid of numbers shows the actual number of living organisms at each level. So what that means is we would go out and we would find the grass plants and we would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we would count how many grass plants there are. We would count all the trees. We would count all the daffodils. We would count all the tulips. We would count all the bushes. We would count everything that is at that producer level. Okay. And that would go to at the bottom of our pyramid. And then we would go to the rabbits and we would count every single rabbit and we would count every single chipmunk and we would count every single squirrel, and that would go on the next level of our pyramid. And so oftentimes we're going to end up with a normal pyramid shape. Okay, so there's going to be more grass. There's going to be more of this. These are voles, which are little like mousy kind of things, rodent-y things. And then this is the barn owl. So we've got one barn owl, a bunch of voles, and then a bunch more grass. Now, the pyramid of numbers is the only one that can be tricky because the pyramid of numbers can get a little bit wonky depending on how you define your ecosystem. If we define our ecosystem as this one tree, then our number on the bottom is 1. Okay. But that one tree might have 1,000 caterpillars living in it. And then it might have 10 of these unfortunately named birds living in it as well. And then just one sparrowhawk living in it. So you end up with kind of a topsy-turvy sort of pyramid, which is a pyramid of numbers, but it's not really a pyramid. It's almost like a Christmas tree shape because it's got this little stem at the bottom, which makes sense since it usually happens when you're talking about trees. Okay, so that's our pyramid of numbers. All right, there was a lot in there. Hopefully you got it all. The nice thing about videos is if you missed anything, you can rewind and go back and watch it again. All right, see you soon.